Hey mini dreamers! Yeah, it's been a while, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. But hear me out, okay? I've been hard at work designing this miniature window frame pack. I absolutely love stained glass. And if you don't, then we can't be friends. Sorry. And since the frames don't include glass panes, I wanted to test a bunch of different ways to create the stained glass effect myself so that I can share them with you guys. So in this video, you'll see me trying several methods to see which ones look best, which ones are easiest, and which ones I'd actually use again. And of course, which ones I wouldn't. I also have some really exciting news to tell you, so stay tuned. Alright, I had way too many ideas for this video, but I narrowed it down to a few methods that I really wanted to test. You'll see me trying cardstock on acetate, vinyl on frosted acetate, UV resin with glass paint, glossy accents with alcohol inks, UV resin clay with alcohol inks, and even 3D printed panes. Which, to be honest, were kind of a pain in the butt. Get it? Pain? The first technique I used was cutting out cardstock on the Cricut. You could also use the Silhouette or whatever cutting machine you have. This method is a lot flimsier than the other methods, but depending on what your usage is, it could work out. Also, if you wanted it to be thicker, you could cut out many of the same design and glue them together and stack them, so it would become a lot thicker. Here I'm using my Create a Sticker Max by Xyron. You can tell how old it is by how yellow it is. I've had it for a while. I thought it might be the best method to stick the cardstock to the acetate, since the glue wouldn't ooze out and kind of ruin the acetate. I used my little rubber tool. I forget exactly what it's called. It's like an eraser, but it's actually meant to take glue off. And I didn't do a very good job taking the glue off the first time. So I did it after I stuck it to the acetate. And I wouldn't recommend that. I really recommend trying to get most of the glue off before, because it kind of smears onto the acetate and leaves a mark. I mean, you can still go at it longer, I guess. I just didn't do it long enough because I don't really find it a fun thing to do. And I'm just not patient enough. Trying to get those little bits of adhesive off, it just really annoys me. It feels like they never go away. Anyway, I started coloring with my Sharpies. I used my fine tip Sharpies on the side that had no cardstock, but you could also use your bold tip. You can see I also used pokey tool to kind of take it out before sticking it on there, but again, I didn't do a good enough job. And so I used the rubber tool to remove the glue. It was surprisingly hard to get it off the acetate. I just stuck it down to the acetate temporarily to be able to do that. And it was actually harder than I thought to get off. So I would really recommend trying to get it all off when it's still on the sticker paper. Anyway, it kind of worked out in the end. I got it on there and it looked pretty good. I wanted to make sure you can see the black line from both sides. And like I said before, you could always cut out multiples of the design and glue them onto each other, stack them to give a thicker frame look. So then all that's left to do is cut it out around the window and you're done. You can place it in whatever build or dollhouse that you're making. Next up is the cardstock on frosted acetate, and this one was a doozy. I used this really old can of frosted glass coating. It's meant for glass for coating, like, I don't know, the window for outside so people can't see in. But anyway, I gave it a good shake because I wasn't sure what was going to happen, honestly. I've had it for so long. And then I started spraying, and I couldn't really tell what I was doing because, as you can see, it went on transparent. Plus, I wasn't in a well-ventilated area, so I was kind of getting choked out by the fumes. So I just kind of went for it as fast as I could, and then I booked it out of there. When I came back a few hours later, I was pleasantly surprised. The frost had frosted. Of course, it wasn't very uniform because of the way I did things, but all in all, I liked the results, and the imperfections kind of gave a stained glass feel, I think. Anyway, let me know what you think. So then I started weeding out the vinyl that I also cut on my Cricut. That was kind of a fun process. A little life hack that I use is I got a nail polish bottle holder from the dollar store, and you put that on your fingers, and then it makes it really easy to pick off the vinyl and stick it in there, instead of having to, I don't know, stick it on your hand or put it on the table or something. Less annoying for sure. I'm starting to discover that I'm easily annoyed. Maybe it's the perimenopause. Anyway, once I finished weeding, it was time to put the vinyl onto the acetate. I had already pre-cut some squares and rectangles to the right size. So the squares are 2 by 2 inches and the rectangles are 2 by 4s. This went actually really smoothly. I didn't run into any problems, except for the last one, of course. That's always how it works, isn't it? But I developed a little technique where I would place the vinyl in the corner to start with, and then I used my tweezers to kind of help me rotate and line up one of the lines properly along the edge, and then I would kind of roll it down the acetate to avoid any air bubbles. And that worked relatively well until, like I said, the last one, which is way trickier. As you can tell, I struggled quite a bit trying to get the vinyl on there. It kept sticking to itself, and the air bubbles were plenty. We got there in the end, though, and I'm really happy with the result. Next, I used my alcohol markers to color in the acetate. These markers were bought for me as a gift. I know one set came from Michael's and the other one came from Winners. They're just kind of not a generic, but they're not Copics or Ohuhu, but they do the job. And what I found between both sets is they actually have the exact same colors with the exact same names and numbers. So it's probably one parent company that makes both sets. So if they look like what I showed you, you're probably good to go. Or just use any one that you have. You don't have to run out and buy my specific markers. They're not that special. Anyway, so I colored in the side, once again, that didn't have the vinyl, just made it easier to color in. And I kept flipping it around and make sure I didn't miss any spots because I couldn't really tell until I flipped it around. I enjoyed this process. It was fun and relaxing. So I wasn't annoyed for once. Yay, me. The next technique I used was a 3D printed frame with UV resin and alcohol inks. I printed my frame on my 3D printer using black filament, and then I stuck it to some duct tape so that the UV resin wouldn't leak out. Okay, these are the alcohol inks that I used. God love birthday money. Anyway, I finally got to pull them out and use them. And here's the UV resin that I used. I think I picked it up at Michael's. That's where I got the alcohol inks as well. And now you can see me trying to squeeze it in to the shapes, but it's not working, and I'm wondering what's going on. And of course, something stupid, right? So, can you guess what I did wrong? You're about to find out. Yep, that's right. I hadn't taken off the foil. See, it just wouldn't be a me video if I did everything perfectly. Okay, back to the project. So my thought process was squeeze the UV resin into the cavities and then drop in some alcohol ink. And although this worked okay, I think I would do it differently next time. I would definitely mix the alcohol ink in with the UV resin first and then use an eyedropper or something to put it into the cavities. What happened is the alcohol inks kind of pulled together, and I did mix it with a toothpick, but it didn't quite get into the corners. And also, when I cured the resin, it didn't really mix well into the resin. It kind of sat on top, and it was really watery, and so it didn't really give as much as an effect as I'd hoped. It was okay, but I would really like to try it again using a better technique. Here you can see what I mean. I used a Kleenex to soak up the alcohol inks, and look how much came off. So not the best technique. It's still a good material to use, just not the way I did it. Here's the end result. You can see that the colors definitely didn't go everywhere I wanted them to. You can see the light going through it. I think by mixing it in first and then dropping it into the cavities, it would work a lot better and would give a much better result. Now comes the fun part. I ended up picking up an airbrush at one of those Amazon return bin stores. And I have wanted one of these babies forever. Ever since I was a kid, I was fascinated with airbrush painting. And I never really made it a priority or, I just thought it was really cool. And now I have my very own. It came with everything I need. It even came with a bunch of paint colors. I looked it up after I got home and it has really good reviews and I really like it. So if you'd like to buy one for yourself, I'll put the link in with the description as well as anything else that I've used in this video. I've never used it before and so there was a bit of a learning curve. I made some silly mistakes but got it all working in the end. Then I was able to use it to paint a wooden frame that I cut out using my laser cutter. And it was really fun. This is actually a really good airbrush. After I bought it, I went and saw some reviews on YouTube, and it really is a good little machine. So if you'd like one for yourself for any kind of miniature painting projects, I'll make sure to put a link in the description along with everything else that I've used in today's video. So after everything was painted, I used the same duct tape as I used for the UV resin, and I taped down my frame. And the idea this time was to use some Glossy Accents by Ranger. And let it dry overnight. Don't touch it, walk away, just let it dry. Let it dry, let it dry. Okay, I'm really sorry. Once it was dry, I used some Pebeo Vitrail glass paint to paint over the Glossy Accents. I used a little application stick that I got. I got a whole pack of them at a crafting de-stash sale. And let me tell you, I have put these babies to good use. They're so versatile. And they're really great for getting into tiny spaces. So here's what the finished product looked like. You can see it kind of did the same thing as the UV resin with the alcohol inks. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there. If you know and you have any tricks, please let me know in the comments. I'm sure I could go in and paint some more into the corners and it might look fine. Or if you want it to look like broken stained glass, well, this technique might be for you. This next technique is probably one of my favorites because it was the most satisfying and the most convincing. This time I remembered to put Vaseline on and then I grabbed some of my UV resin clay. It is super gooey, but with the petroleum jelly it really helps. And so I gathered it up as best I could. Got it into somewhat of a ball, and I had already poured some alcohol ink on my acetate before realizing that I needed to put some Vaseline on my hands. So that's what I did, and then I took the UV resin clay and I smeared it into the ink and mixed it all together with my hands, and you can see how beautiful that color is turning out. Then what I did is I took small pieces and shoved it into the cavities, trying to make sure to get into each corner. And yeah, this was a really fun, satisfying process. Something else that didn't annoy me. Yay! So when I was finished with the orange part, I wanted to add in some pink because pink and orange is my ultimate favorite combo of colors. So here's the pink I used. I think it's called like Flamingo. Yeah. And once I put it down on the acetate, I was kind of questioning myself because I realized how similar it looked to the orange. And so I was thinking, okay, what am I doing? This is not going to look any different than the orange. But surprisingly, it did. You can tell the difference. Not now, but later. I actually ended up adding a little bit of red also, which helped a lot. So thankfully that was the case. So I just used the same technique, obviously. Now there were smaller holes to fill, and so sometimes I used a little pokey tool to get it in there. This worked relatively well, especially in those little tiny, tiny holes that you can barely see. For the larger areas, I just kind of made a little snake clay and shoved it in there and tried to smooth it out. Then I hit it with my UV light, and I think this turned out really good. Of course, I missed some corners again somehow, but that's not a technique issue, that's a user issue. AKA a me issue, okay? I'm the problem. It's me. I would love to know in the comments if you think you would try this technique. I really love the variations in the resin clay with the color and the texture. Last but not least are the window panes that I designed to fit into my 3D printed or laser cut frames. These were 3D printed using transparent filament. I had some blue and some orange on hand. These were kind of tricky to get right, and I still haven't really got it 100% right. That's why I'm not offering them up yet. I was able to make a few of them work, and they just snap right in there, and when it works, it's so satisfying. I just wasn't able to get it to work consistently. So that's why I'm not ready to offer them up, because I want to make sure everything I offer you guys is of very high quality and is going to work. But just listen to that crunch. So satisfying. And now for the big reveal. I can finally announce that I have a new Etsy shop. If you would like to try out the miniature frames that I just showed you, I have them available on my Etsy shop. Now, if you like trying before you buy, or if you're just cheap like me, I also have a brand new website. And on the website, I have a freebies section. So if you click on the freebies section and you become a mini dreamer by joining my mailing list, you will get a freebie for one of the window frames. And you can try it out for yourself, all for free. And if you really like it and you want to make some of the other designs, then you can always buy them in my Etsy shop. The free one is actually the one right here, the little square. It's pretty versatile, so I thought I'd offer that one as a freebie. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. Also, make sure to check out my TikTok and Instagram. I'm not super active on there yet, but I'll get there. But I was really excited to share this news with you, and I hope you're excited with me. I really want to offer you guys digital files that are reliable and useful and adorable. Anyway, take care, bye for now, and don't forget, big dreams come in small packages.